Good evening and welcome to Beyond the Noise. Our topics today including discussing the DNI report that was supposed to due Friday, unfortunately it might be delayed, as well as founder of Overstock.com exposing Hillary Clinton's bribe, and also China's 2021 censorship predictions. If it is your first time here, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the show. And as well, I just wanted to remind you guys that YouTube is censoring voices that are speaking truthfully and not following the big tech's plan. It is so important that you're at least following one of our social media accounts or are in touch via email. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Here's my brief opinion about the Insurrection Act and the martial law, because it has to do with truth. Now, I actually think that Trump can flip everyone's opinion about him if he reveals the truth. But how exactly does that look? Is he suddenly going to reveal the deep state? Well, it won't work out because the media is on the side of the deep state. So what will he do? He has to actually use either the Insurrection Act or the martial law to dig out the evidence. Because this is the only way in which people will see the truth about the election and then form their opinion about this entire country's dark side. Now, the election, if it were overturned by the lawsuit or Congress, then all the evidence and truth is buried under the false disguise of the government body. And then people will just return to the same 4-year we just had. Their hate for Trump will only grow and will continue to protest among other violent outcomes. And this will grow with the continuation of the extreme liberalism. In fact, this may fall right into the plan of the deep state. Even if Trump wins 4 more years, this can still be prepared under the disguise of governmentship. And it will stir chaos behind the scene. But if all of this was found under the Insurrection Act or the martial law, then the evidence will be overwhelming to the point that no one can refute it. It's also a way to prevent civil opposition and potential riots, because had the Supreme Court ruled to overturn the election, there is bound to be so much opposition from Antifa, Black Lives Matter, or any of the progressive movements that are marching onto the Supreme Court. They're going to be demanding quote-unquote justice. It's bound to be violent. So if Trump acts on the Martial or the Insurrection Act, not only can he prevent civil unrest from happening, he will not involve any controversial government or judicial body in the process. In other words, he will use the Insurrection Act and the martial law for the betterment of the people in this country. Now, so it seems we're involving this whole situation with violence and protests, but it actually won't come out that way. It's actually the only way to gain people's confidence back in America. Now, DNI director has delayed the report that was supposed to due with a deadline on December 18th. The director of national intelligence must produce a report to the president for any foreign interference. This report was to be submitted by Friday as the 45-day deadline hits. And in our last night's video, we talked about the importance of the report as the precursor sort of to kickstart martial law or Insurrection Act. So let's talk about what happened. DNI John Ratcliffe told CBS yesterday that China, Russia, and Iran were involved in election interference. This is awesome because we actually get a foreign interference from a direct official. Now, this was reported way before the actual tweet from the DNI office came out with the delay. So here is Catherine Herridge of CBS talking about Ratcliffe, and then the actual announcement came out as the following. This afternoon, the DNI was notified by career intelligence officials that the intelligence community will not meet the December 18 deadline set by the executive order and Congress to submit the Intelligence Committee's classified assessment on foreign threats to the 2020 U.S. election. The intelligence community has received relevant reporting since the election, and a number of agencies have not finished coordinating on the product. The DNI is committed to providing this report to our customers expeditiously. So these tweets outline 2 important issues. The first one is that something happened between the announcement of the SolarWinds hacking and today's announcement that China, Iran, and Russia interference from the CBS video. Furthermore, according to OAN's Jack Posobiec, the report was delayed because some members of the intelligence community did not want to include China in the report. And then that got Ratcliffe to refuse to sign off on the report unless China was included in the discussion. Remember, the intelligence report is gathered via all intelligence branches of the US government, which includes the CIA, the FBI, and DHS, and some of the other branches as well. So we know that the reason they don't want China in there is, one, it doesn't fit the narrative of the Russian hoax, and 2, it is against the deep state's mission to expose China, who at this point is essentially an ally. Now, in other words, Ratcliffe is refusing to allow career intelligence officials who are trying to cover up the election reports. He wants to expose the foreign interference. And the second issue is that maybe the report wasn't sufficient enough as it was drafted to actually warrant on paper a full mobilization of the executive order, to which Ratcliffe will refine the report and submit it again. But here's the interesting part. The original tweet they have said since that election day have been preparing the evidence for monitoring the issue and have been involved in gathering intelligence for this case particularly, which means that since election day, there has been close monitoring of evidences of potential vote switching. Now, as well, we can tell that this is a cyber warfare between the government agencies. We have Trump's military cyber team versus the deep state cyber team. And this digital warfare is been fighting over behind the scenes ever since at least early November. But then we also know that because we have until the end of Friday to produce a report, it doesn't necessarily have to be the official report released for public viewing. Trump could receive an interim report per the executive order has stated and outlined. Now, we should wish that the official report comes out for public viewing, but if Trump can get one right away, that's better than nothing. Also, we can't rule out the possibility that the interim report will be done by Friday, which means that maybe Trump even had the report briefing already, and the public report is just going to be coming out later in the January dates. Especially given that Ratcliffe has been closely following Trump this whole week, we should expect a on-time report to be made. So we'll have to see what happens on Friday. So Jack also tweeted this, that the classified report is still being delayed. Regardless, if anything, it will push the actions back maybe 2 or 3 days at most. The delay can only buy so much time for the deep state. The bottom line is the report is inevitable. Richard Granell, the former acting director of national intelligence, wrote on Twitter that Ratcliffe is standing up for career analysts who want to get their views reflected accurately. In other words, fighting to keep the intelligence from being politicized. Just to give an idea as to the scope of this report, we have potentially including anywhere from as early as the election night up until the SolarWinds system attack. This report will hopefully summarize a streamlined attack on democracy through cyber warfare by the foreign agents. The report needs to link China, who we have repeatedly covered as the #1 enemy in terms of the United States since Trump took office. Last night, a joint statement from CISA, FBI, and DNI was released on the SolarWinds attack. So it could also be possible that this attack would be included in the report, and that's why it's delayed. Now, as we still don't know who really did the SolarWinds attack, some people are pointing to Russia, but I have a doubt about that. The 3 departments also formed a cyber unified coordination group, as well as the entire intelligence community is working towards this attack. Now, we either can see it as sort of a distraction from the real issue, which is election integrity, but it could also be foreign interference, or if that the attack was directed at something else that may be helping Trump. Either way, the attention should still be on the report itself. I feel that the report does not reflect China's malicious role in this election, then it won't serve a purpose. And I don't see a point in bringing it to the president if that's not the case. The main issue in the report should be China, because we know China definitely have impacted the election results, based on multiple affidavits and evidence suggesting its link to the UBS bank, as well as some very good deduction of reasoning based on the years between Trump and China. So let us stay tuned. Our second topic today is Patrick Byrne, who has been the founder of Overstock.com, but more importantly, who was exposing some of the irregularities in the election. He recently was interviewed by Mel Krell, in which he said that he was involved in bribing Hillary Clinton with $18 million. This bribe was a setup by the then Obama FBI to ensure that Hillary will stay in check. According to the words of Byrne, Obama wanted to maintain tight control over Hillary's 8 years in office. He was told by the agents that Hillary will win 2 terms, and I wonder how that could be done. He then revealed that Obama has his people across the federal bureaucracy, especially in the Department of Justice. And if Hillary does not do what Obama wants, then she will get exposed for the bribe. Something termed Operation Snow Globe. John Brennan, the former CIA director and Obama, coined the term. They have Hillary take the bribe as a bait to get her to step into a snow globe in which they can shake up any time. Essentially, it was a setup to control Hillary in case she wants to stray from the pack of the deep state. Now, this was all turned upside down, of course, when Trump won 2016. A surprise to everybody. And here's the catch. It was originally planned to be a continuation of Obama term 3 and term 4, but that got turned into a Trump administration. So they had to morph this plan into what is now the Russian collusion. So why is this story significant? Well, we actually get a glimpse of how the deep state operates. They run on two resources, manipulation and fear, even against their own people, like the Clintons. And they're ruthless in establishing the control to manipulate her like a puppet. Imagine this, the corruption is running so deep that the only way to keep themselves alive is by baiting their own people into continuously working for them. So from this, we see that the deep state is a very fragile and very weak group. They run on a large network of complacent people and complacent lies. And these individuals in the deep states are working together not because they share this common value. They work together because they know each other's deep, dark secrets, and they have to keep that corruption chain going. Now, the only way they can stay alive is if they work together against someone like Trump, who is trying to destroy the deep state. So when Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp, that shook the hearts of these people. This is also how the Chinese politicians work. They stay together to cover for each other's trails and each other's corruptions, to a point where so many are involved, it is hard to leave that network. So they continue to corrupt each other until eventually bribery, lies, fears, and manipulation overboils. It's a constant fear of being exposed that drives them to be more corrupt and even more corrupt and do more evil things. Because they know that if one falls, they all fall. It's that weak. This is the hard part for Trump, because he is trying to open the lid to what is basically the biggest pot in the world. It's so hard to try to dig out the entire root of the deep state. What he should do is chop down the center roots, and by doing so, the lesser roots will slowly wither away. In other words, arrest those who are definitely the head of the deep state, get the message across. Here's another problem. The deep state doesn't care about human lives. They will kill and destroy anyone who tries to prevent them from achieving their goal. This became one of the best tools against Trump, because they know that Trump values and cherishes life so much, so they aim to destroy life. This battle is slowly evolving into a fight for time, because not only is Trump being pushed into a corner, so are the deep states. Both sides know that whoever loses this battle, it's over for them. They will lose everything. If Trump wins, the deep state is over. And if the deep state wins, well, Trump and the American people will be doomed. So the deep state is blatantly lying and performing fraudulent actions in bright daylights. Many of us are shocked at the capacity and the lies at the cover-ups during this election. We're shocked because we can't comprehend such events happening in a free country. But the deep state has no choice. It's to the point where they will need to do it in broad daylight, because otherwise, their entire system will perish. Over the past 4 years, many battles were actually fought under the table, behind the scenes. But now we approach the point where whoever flips the table first is actually going to gain the advantage. Time is not on either party's sides. So Trump has to act fast, because the slower and the more mercy he actually shows, it's just going to be innocent people dying. Because the deep state doesn't care about everyday people. All they care is their own profits. Harrison Deal, the death of the 21-year-old who was David Perdue's former intern, as well as Kelly Loeffler's staffer and Governor Brian Kemp's family friend. In this picture, the cars look to have exploded, but it doesn't look like a car crash. Lori Linwood said it almost looked like a car bomb. Was this a warning to Kemp to discourage him from taking Georgia's situation public? Maybe. As well, Georgia's Bureau of Investigation agent James O'Sullivan was found in an apparent suicide. He was the lead investigator in Harrison Deal's case of car accident. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but these deaths are just not natural. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation released an official statement that says the death has no connection with the election. So we'll leave it at that for the sake of the family members of O'Sullivan. But the problem is, if we continue to allow the deep state to kill innocent people, these cases will continue to happen, and Trump needs to act fast. Trump wants to use evidence and logic to deal with these people, but corruption is so deep that it extends into every aspect of the government branch. How can you use evidence when the entire network is ignoring what you're saying? The problem we face right now isn't that we don't have evidence. It's that the evidence isn't even being considered. It was ignored by the FBI, the DOJ, and the DHS. Everyone turned a blind eye to this case. Because normally, even with just a slim, narrow potential of evidence, the legal and the justice system will be full on to investigate it. So why is it that when it comes to this case, they all seems to drag on and work extremely slowly? Why are some of the intelligence agencies deciding to drag on giving the report to the DNI? Because they know that the longer it drags on, the better it is for them. They can just apologize afterwards and say, oh, we were sorry, and that this is the end of it. If Trump wants to play fair, but his opponents don't, it's a losing situation for the good guys. Both sides want to act before January 6th, because that's for sure. I think that they have to work something out before then. Otherwise, the days are approaching. Freedom House released an article on predicting the new censorship developments in China in the coming 2021. There are 5. The first prediction is spiking censorship and surveillance surrounding COVID-19 vaccines and outbreaks. The second one is punishment for outspoken political and economics elites. 3 is amplification of nationalist voice. And 4 is tighten leash on the tech giants. And number 5 is big data surveillance and its use in the political persecution. Now, these are not new, but they sure will be jacked up to the next level coming this next year. Because the CCP wants to ensure that anything related to the virus will only be directly on the quote of the good things that they were able to achieve. For example, blur the line as to who actually came out with the vaccine first, how well they handled the initial outbreaks in Wuhan, and definitely how well they controlled the countrywide pandemic. We know all of this is untrue, given now that we've seen the initial outbreak was covered up, and real working vaccines came from the US first. And China still is suffering from the pandemic. As well, China likes to promote nationalist values. Now, these are most commonly blended with the Communist Party values. They do so to promote a sense of nationalism that the party equals country. We all know that China is not represented by the communists, who essentially destroyed 5,000 years of culture and history in less than 20 years. As well, establishing dominance over big tech and companies in China in general. These include tech like Huawei, Alibaba, and Chinacoms. Though the CCP suffered a great loss given the US ban on Chinese companies in the US stock markets, and as well as the American investments coming this January, China will not tell its citizens about it. But if anyone can come across the firewall censorship inside China, they will all know the truth. This will also lead to a tightened grip on the use of big data censorship, due to the cover-up of those political persecution of religious groups and human rights activists and human rights lawyers, because censorship will only be dialed to all-time high. Because the more censorship we see here in the West, the more people actually inside China will be standing up. Because the pressure we see here in terms of censorship is equal to the amount of people fed up with the government in China. Not only that, but 2021 will also be the year in which the CCP continues to attack the US and any free country through espionage and the likes of Fangfang, female spies, in an indirect warfare unknown to conventional military strategies. A recent report shows a data leak that suggests the CCP has close to 2 million CCP members who work in large multinational companies and embassies. These data show that the CCP's global expansion of network and the CCP spies, their essentially employees, are the new age of military force, and their foreign influence is done so through these power military units. In order to be better understanding of this situation, I have a clip from the American Thought Leaders interview with Joshua Phillips, who is an investigative journalist, talking about some of China's plans to attack the US.
The Chinese Communist Party has a saying when it comes to their warfare, psychological warfare operations, and other forms of subversion: strangle you with your own systems. In other words, observing how different countries operate, what is controversial within their systems, how does their system function, how can we use those systems to twist things around, to cause chaos, to mess things up, to use it against them. You say you believe in free speech? We'll have protests in your own backyard calling you out. You say you believe in free press? Well, we'll start up state-run media in your country, and we'll use those state-run media to lie to your population, to spread our propaganda. That's what they do. You believe in free markets? How about we bring state-run companies that can sell below cost and put your companies out of business and take over your industries. That's what they're doing, right? Strangle you with your own systems. And what is controversial in the United States? What is most controversial? Racism. This race narrative, they know they can use it. They've been doing it for a very long time. There are different groups, for example, Committee of 100 in the US, who every time a Chinese spy is arrested, they call it racism, because they know that's what we're sensitive to. The Chinese military has a doctrine on this, the three warfares doctrine: psychological warfare, media warfare, and legal warfare. This is publicly adopted into their military doctrine. This is part of their military system. Now, what are these? Psychological warfare is not necessarily lying to you. Psychological warfare is altering how you interpret information. And so when you see a virus coming out of China and people say this virus came out of China, if you call it the Chinese virus, they want to use this and twist it around and say it is racist if you talk about the origin of this virus. What is media warfare? Media warfare is the manipulation or control of outlets of information, not just news outlets, but say social media, online platforms, the ability to speak openly. Anything that would allow people to communicate would be a target of media warfare. And what is legal warfare? Legal warfare is a manipulation of international legal systems. The Chinese Communist Party, for them, this is adopted into their military code. This is war fighting to them.
So really, 2021 will be the year that the CCP doubles down on subverting American society. If Trump isn't elected, they also have essentially waged a secret war against the US and the West since a long time ago. Their military tactics have long shifted from guns and ammos to secret spy tactics. So that is it for today. Tomorrow, we will hopefully have a report come out. As well, I just wanted to thank you all for joining me for Premiere each night. I enjoyed talking to all of you and really appreciate all the kind support. As well, we're introducing a donation link as many of you have been asking. So thank you and have a wonderful night. Make sure you're subscribed if that is your first time here. As always, I'm David Zhang and you're watching Beyond the Noise.